At 2:47 a.m., the Strait of Hormuz is still functioning. At least on the surface it is. The first outbound tanker has already finished loading. The pilot is waiting for final clearance. Deck lights are still on. The water is calm. There is no fire on the horizon, no explosion, no missile warning. None of the obvious signs television usually needs before it calls something a crisis. Targets are moving on radar. Radio traffic is routine. Ports, ship owners, dispatchers, insurers, everyone is still doing what they were supposed to be doing. Then something changes. Not on the water first, in judgment. A maritime security alert is forwarded to a duty office. A report about possible mining activity begins moving through overlapping chains of command. A few departures that had already been cleared are told to wait. No one officially closes the strait, but no one can confidently say it is safe either. To the outside world, Hormuz is still open. To the people whose business depends on it, it has already begun to close, because the most dangerous moment in a choke point is often not when the first ship blows up. It is the moment before that, when nobody can guarantee the next ship will not. The missile batteries on shore may still be silent. Fast attack craft may still be inside harbor. Drones may still be farther out, but the crisis has already begun. Tanker schedules start shifting. Insurance models start repricing uncertainty. Naval staffs begin asking whether this is a limited act of mining, a coercive signal, or the opening move of something much larger. In that moment, it looks like a technical problem in maritime traffic. But what is really changing is the credibility of the route itself. And that is where the title question becomes dangerous. Why hasn't the U.S. Navy simply cleared the mines in Hormuz? The real issue is not whether the Navy can destroy a few mines. The real issue is whether it can restore a route that commercial shipping will trust. While hostile threats are still active, markets are already reacting, and the pressure of global energy dependence is growing by the hour. Hormuz matters because it is not just narrow, it is critical. This is not just another sea lane on a map. It is a valve. Oil from the Gulf moves through it. LNG moves through it. Tankers feeding refineries in Asia, Europe, and beyond all depend on it. U.S. Energy Information Administration estimates in recent years have repeatedly shown that a very large share of the world's seaborne oil trade, and around 1/5 of global LNG trade, passes through this corridor. On a map, it is a thin strip of water. In reality, it connects producers, ports, insurers, refiners, traders, and financial markets into one continuous rhythm. That is why when Hormuz becomes uncertain, the damage does not stay at sea. What begins to fail first is timing. A tanker delayed outside the Gulf is not just losing charter time. That delay ripples into berth allocation, refinery intake planning, cargo delivery deadlines, futures pricing, and reinsurance exposure. The real danger is not only the possibility that a ship might be damaged, it is that an entire system begins paying for uncertainty, all at once. Risk does not come only from detonation. It comes from hesitation. It comes from rerouting. It comes from ships waiting for orders that no one feels ready to give. This is why the question cannot be reduced to, if the U.S. Navy is so powerful, why doesn't it just go in and clear the mines? Because from the moment mining becomes plausible, this stops being a narrow military problem. It becomes a systems problem. It becomes a question of energy security, a question of maritime insurance, a question of intelligence, a question of alliance coordination, a question of alliance coordination, a question of political timing, a question of whether order can be restored before the cost of disorder becomes self-sustaining. And sea mines are designed for exactly this kind of confrontation. Their power lies in asymmetry, not because they are glamorous, not because they are technologically superior, but because they are cheap, quiet, hard to verify, and brutally effective at forcing stronger navies into slower and more expensive behavior. A minefield does not need to sink a fleet to succeed. It only needs to prove that a route can no longer be trusted. That is the logic the U.S. Navy has seen before. In 1988, the frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts struck an Iranian mine in the Gulf. The blast nearly broke the ship's back. Sailors fought flooding and fire to save her. The incident helped trigger Operation Praying Mantis. But more important than the retaliation was the lesson. Mines do not have to win a naval war directly. They only have to interrupt the stronger side's freedom to move, to escort, to reassure, and to dictate tempo. That is what a mine really attacks, not a hull, not even a ship, a timetable. So when people ask why the U.S. Navy cannot clear Hormuz quickly, they are usually assuming the problem is explosive ordnance. It is not. The real problem is that mining turns the sea itself into an argument. It forces every operator, every insurer, every commander, every shipmaster to ask the same question again and again: what exactly is safe enough to act on? And that is where the first layer of pressure builds, because mines are not one thing. There are moored mines suspended in the water column. There are bottom mines lying still on the seabed. There are influence mines that react to acoustic, magnetic, or pressure signatures. They can be laid by warships, disguised vessels, small craft, or covert teams working at night. The real issue is not only where the mines are, it is that you may not know how many were laid, what kind they are, how they were armed, whether dummy objects were mixed in, or whether the opponent intends to mine again while you are still searching. On paper, that sounds like a technical challenge. In practice, it becomes a tempo trap, because Hormuz is not deep open ocean. It is a narrow, busy, cluttered environment. Bottom conditions matter. Traffic density matters. Historical debris matters. Background noise matters. Sonar contacts do not come labeled. A suspicious return might be a mine. It might be scrap. It might be a natural anomaly. But once the possibility exists, you do not get to ignore it. Every contact has to be evaluated. Every evaluation takes time. Every minute spent confirming a contact is a minute in which shipping remains frozen, assets remain exposed, and the wider crisis continues to grow. This is where many outsiders underestimate the problem. They assume us naval strength means speed, but mine warfare punishes speed. The real problem is not firepower. It is proof. You do not restore a shipping lane by saying, "We've probably dealt with most of it." You restore a shipping lane when commercial operators believe the route is credible again, and credibility at sea is expensive. Tanker companies do not move on optimism. Insurers do not move on confidence alone. They move when risk has been reduced enough, verified enough, and protected enough to make transit commercially rational again. That means mine clearance is not just a combat action. It is a trust-building action under threat. And that brings in the second line of the story, the system behind the scene. Mine countermeasure forces are among the most vulnerable elements in any naval operation. They are often slower, more methodical, and more exposed than the ships protecting them. You can put destroyers on the outer ring. You can use aircraft to watch the coastline. You can monitor fast boats, missile sites, and drones. But the very act of clearing mines forces the stronger Navy into a kind of disciplined vulnerability. It must focus. It must slow down. It must hold position. It must work carefully in the exact window when the enemy wants it distracted. Risk does not only come from the mines already in the water, it also comes from what happens while you are trying to remove them. That is why clearing a mine chokepoint is never just a sequence of explosions. It is a layered operation. Intelligence has to estimate where mining likely occurred and how the attacker thinks. Surveillance has to watch for follow-on activity. Air defense has to stay ready in case the clearing effort is used as bait for a wider attack. Surface escorts have to secure the perimeter. Unmanned systems and specialized crews have to search, classify, confirm, and neutralize. Political leadership has to decide how much risk it is willing to absorb in order to reopen traffic. Allies have to coordinate. Merchant shipping has to be managed, queued, rerouted, or delayed. On the surface, it looks like one waterway is in trouble. At a deeper level, an entire machine has to start turning. This is also where the first real cognitive shift happens. The real issue is not how to destroy a mine. It is how to prove the absence of the next one. That is why the process is so slow and so unforgiving. Detection, classification, neutralization, reassessment, marking, limited reopening. Repeat, a powerful Navy still has to move through these steps, because the standard it is trying to reach is not military satisfaction. It is operational credibility. The U.S. Navy has spent years trying to move this problem away from direct human exposure. Unmanned surface vessels can tow sonars. Unmanned underwater systems can inspect suspicious contacts. Mission packages can be deployed from ships farther from the most dangerous area. The concept is simple. Keep sailors farther from the minefield, push sensors forward, and build a networked picture of the threat before committing to disposal. That is a real advantage. But it is not magic. Because unmanned systems still need communications, maintenance, launch and recovery cycles, sustainment, operators, and protection. They still work inside a hostile environment. They still produce ambiguous data that human beings must interpret. They can compress part of the timeline. They cannot erase uncertainty itself. So the second round of pressure arrives exactly where hope begins. Yes, technology helps. Yes, it can reduce exposure. Yes, it can speed up portions of the workflow. But no, It cannot turn mine clearance into something instant. And no, it cannot make a mine choke point safe simply because a great power has arrived on scene. This is the moment when the crisis changes shape. The objective is no longer make the whole strait safe immediately. The objective becomes create a usable corridor before paralysis becomes the new normal. That sounds like a smaller ambition. In reality, it is the beginning of system control. Mature military systems do not solve every problem all at once. They redefine the immediate objective in a way that keeps the wider structure alive. They do not wait for perfect certainty, but they also do not pretend uncertainty has vanished. They carve out a survivable path between those two realities. So instead of reopening the entire Strait of Hormuz, the Navy's first real success would likely be narrower and much more modest: establish a limited transit corridor. Secure it, verify it, protect it, and move the first ships through under controlled conditions. This is where the execution phase becomes the climax. Not because the language gets louder, because every earlier constraint now starts cashing out. You do not clear the whole sea first. You clear one section. You do not move every tanker at once. You move the most essential traffic first. You do not declare victory. You buy one window of managed movement. Outer. Layer escorts. Go to work. Air surveillance. Tightens. Electronic monitoring stays fixed on coastal activity. Unmanned surface vessels move forward. Towed sonars begin scanning the designated route. A first suspicious contact appears on the screen. No one rushes to dramatize it. It is classified, compared. Rechecked. Is it clutter? Is it metal? Is it an old wreck? Is it a new emplacement? The data goes to another operator. Another pass is made. Another judgment is required. This is what pressure sounds like in real operations. Not shouting. Decision density. A second contact appears. Then a third. The departure window for waiting merchant ships begins colliding with the pace of clearance. Time shrinks. Margin shrinks. Every continue now carries more cost behind it. Every confirm ties up more resources. The system is not failing, but it is being forced to spend continuously just to hold the line between movement and shutdown. Then the first disposal run begins. Approach. Confirm. Place the charge. Withdraw. Detonate. A column of water rises. One red marker disappears from the operational map. But no one mistakes that for resolution. In mine warfare, removing one confirmed threat does not clean a sea lane. It only removes one source of immediate uncertainty. The search continues. More data comes in. More contacts are filtered. More decisions are made. The rhythm does not ease. If anything, it grows more demanding, because now the system has to do two things at once: continue clearing and begin escorting. That is the key payoff of everything explained earlier. The frontline crisis and the system crisis are now happening at the same time. One team is looking at sonar returns. Another is planning merchant movement. Another is covering the air picture. Another is watching for fast boat activity. Another is judging whether the adversary may be preparing to mine again. Another is calculating what level of residual risk can be tolerated without losing confidence entirely. To the outside world, this may look like a narrow naval operation. To the people inside it, it is the restoration of a circulation system under fire. And then, eventually, a first corridor exists. Not a declaration that the strait is fully safe. Not a guarantee that the threat is gone. But a route that is, for a limited time and under heavy protection. Credible enough to use. That distinction matters. It matters strategically, commercially, and psychologically. The first merchant vessels allowed through such a corridor are not sailing through normalcy. They are sailing through a lane that has been made temporarily trustworthy by enormous military effort. Their passage is not proof that the crisis is over. It is proof that the system is still functioning. And that leads directly to the answer. The U.S. Navy could clear mines in Hormuz, but it cannot do it in the way people imagine. It cannot just rush in, explode a handful of objects, and declare the problem solved by the end of the day. Because the real objective is not to produce footage of mines being destroyed. The real objective is to restore a route that commerce will trust. And restoring trust is always slower, costlier, and more fragile than restoring movement on paper. So the answer to the title is not that the Navy lacks capability. It is that capability in this case must operate under the laws of uncertainty. Mines are cheap. Credibility is expensive. Laying a threat can be quick. Proving a corridor is usable is slow. The initial act of disruption may be limited. The cost of recovery expands outward for days, weeks, even longer. The result if the operation works, is not a clean victory. It is a managed restoration. The strait may not be sealed shut. Traffic may resume, at least in part. Markets may calm. Slowly, insurance may normalize. Eventually, but the price of that outcome will not disappear with the last controlled detonation. It will remain in flight hours, ship fatigue, maintenance cycles, escort commitments, intelligence effort, allied coordination, market shock, and the ever-present risk of escalation. That is the deeper lesson. Modern sea power is not just the ability to destroy an enemy. It is the ability to keep circulation alive under uncertainty. It is not just about sinking ships. It is about sustaining confidence. It is not just about entering the battle space. It is about making the battle space usable again for everyone else. On the surface, the Hormuz mine problem looks like a contest between the U.S. Navy and a handful of explosives. But at a deeper level, it reveals something far more important in the most sensitive choke points of globalization. The cheapest weapons are often the best at forcing the most expensive systems into defensive, methodical, and politically exposed behavior. A few mines may not destroy a superpower's navy, but they can slow the rhythm that navy exists to protect. They can force the strongest maritime system in the world to spend immense effort not on domination, but on reassurance, not on decisive battle, but on painstaking restoration, not on spectacle, but on proof. And that is why the question is so revealing. Why hasn't the U.S. Navy cleared the mines in Hormuz yet? Because the real battle is not against the mine alone. It is against the collapse of trust that the mine creates. And once trust is gone, the most expensive part of the operation is not removing the threat. It is buying credibility back.